Excellent. Well, we're back.
We're back, yeah. This is... When are we going to release this?
This is, I don't know, maybe in a few days' time.
Yeah.
Maybe midweek.
Midweek. Well, why not? For the sake of keeping the mystery up, we won't mention what day it is. So you have no idea how long ago or how quickly this was recorded prior to its release.
But, as ever, this is the one and only...
Oh, yeah, the Kaiju.
The original.
The
quintessential.
Accept no substitutes. Kaijusaurus Podcast.
The indubitable.
My name is Roz Menzies, and with me
is Steven Sloss.
And as always, we are slowly making our way through the 30-plus strong Godzilla canon.
Let me do my bit. I like doing my bit.
Okay, we'll do your bit.
This
Steven.
is the podcast in which myself, Steven Sloss, a kaiju fan of 15/16 years, watches and reviews all 30 films in the Godzilla canon with my good friend and newbie, Roz Menzies.
Holla!
There he is.
I was having the thought the other day that depending on... I think, honestly, it might even be like every odd-numbered podcast. We have a very professional opening, very succinct, and then every other one is just like a mess. We're just chatting over each other. We're giddy today, guys.
Why is that, Ross?
I don't know.
Is it because we've just watched 1967's Son of Godzilla?
It might just. That was a very good segue.
That was natural, wasn't it?
That was very natural.
Felt very natural.
But yeah, no, so we watched Son of Godzilla.
1967.
Directed by
Jun Fukuda, who we saw
previously
in our last episode together. Mm-hmm. Just come off the back of Ebirah, Horror of the Deep, aka Godzilla vs. Sea Monster.
By the same director.
By the same director, yes indeed, Jun Fukuda. So Jun Fukuda is back. Shinichi Sekizawa is back writing the screenplay, but co-writes with Kazui Shiba this time. Mm-hmm. Masaru Sato is back providing the original score for the film. And as ever, Tomoyuki Tanaka is producing the film, as he did with every Godzilla film until 1995.
Returning cast members, who do we have?
We have Akihiko Hirata, who we've seen many times by now, most famously as Dr. Serizawa in the original. We have Tadao Takashima, who in this plays the head scientist. You've previously seen him in King Kong vs. Godzilla. He was one of the two pharmaceutical company workers who was sent to the island.
Yeah.
Akira Kubo plays Goro, the reporter in this film.
Yeah.
He was previously the nerdy inventor Tetsuo in Invasion of Astro Monster.
That's right. I recognised him.
We also have, in smaller supporting roles, Kenji Sahara, who you've seen plenty of times. He was the villain in Mothra vs. Godzilla. And Yoshio Tsuchiya plays the scientist who is going a bit stir-crazy. And he was in Godzilla Raids Again and Invasion of Astro Monster.
I mean, that sounds like quite a lot of the cast.
It's quite a lot, yeah, and it's in opposition to Ebirah Horror of the Deep, where really the only recognisable face was Akira Takarada, and in smaller roles, Akihiko Hirata and Jun Tazaki, but that film was mostly populated by newer faces, whereas this one, there's a lot of familiar faces back again. And so, yes, Son of Godzilla. Shall we jump into this?
Yeah, let's jump in. Let's absolutely
do it.
Jump in.
So, on the remote island of Solgell, a United Nations scientific research party are conducting weather experiments, extreme weather experiments, to try and control the weather in order to manipulate it to help solve the world's food shortage.
Yeah, using this technology, it means that they can sort of manipulate other areas that have previously been uninhabitable and grow food.
Such as deserts and dry lands.
Yeah.
But after 3 months in this sort of volatile environment, our scientists are getting a bit stir-crazy, tensions are rising.
They've had no luck with their experiments.
Exactly.
And there's a mysterious sort of brainwave described on the radars.
That's interfering with a lot of their equipment. Into this scenario parachutes Goro Maki, played by Akira Kubo, a freelance reporter who's looking for a good story, and he's somehow got a whiff of these scientists and their experiments, and he's looking for a story there, and they immediately roll them into the payroll and employ him as
chef.
Camp chef / laundry
guy,
man.
They give him a series of roles which he seems to just take with.
He takes it quite well.
He takes it very well. He seems to be happy to do his part.
He does his part.
He helps out.
But at night, the camp is plagued by a giant man-sized praying mantis, or several. After a failed experiment session, which results in hot rain and landslides and flooding and extremely hot temperatures. We realise that this has caused the previously man-sized mantises, mantises.
We'll go with mantises.
Monties. To grow to kaiju-sized proportions. Adding to this mix, the source of the mysterious brain waves that have been interfering with their equipment turns out to be an egg. And from said egg, after much excavating by the giant mantises who have come to be known as Kamacuras, or Gimantis, if you watch either of the English dubs. But we'll get to that. Gimantis or Kamacuras, several of them are digging out this egg. From the egg hatches what appears to be an infant member of the same species as
the big man himself,
the big chief, Godzilla, who soon arrives on the island, who has been called to by the brainwaves and has arrived on Solgell Island to investigate the cause of them, we guess. Godzilla shows up, takes out the Kamacuras, saves this infant, who comes to be known as Minya, or Minilla, and from then on, the scientists have to find a way to survive this new monster island.
Yeah, essentially, their equipment's wrecked, their base is wrecked, they've had to move into the caves for their own protection. They're being assisted by a young woman, a mysterious young woman who has existed on this island as well. She was first discovered by Maki.
Yes.
And they've sort of started a little kindling friendship.
Yeah.
And she makes herself known to them. And it is revealed that she is the son of a sort of well-known...
Daughter.
Oh, pardon me. She is the daughter of a well-known archaeologist from sort of World War II. And our lead professor explains that when World War II finished, this archaeologist remained on the island with his family to sort of continue his experiments and his discoveries. And at some point over the line, his wife died, he died, and his young daughter has grown up all alone on this island.
Yes, indeedy. Add into this mix the appearance of a giant spider, Kumonga, and more trouble from some Kamacuras, and Godzilla and Son and the scientists have to survive this hostile island. Which, spoilers, they all do.
Yes,
except for the giant insects.
And the spider.
Yeah, well, it's not an insect, is it? It's got 8 legs.
That's true.
Anyway, so... And in the final moments of the film, as the scientists' weather experiments finally work, Solgell Island is coated in snow, and it looks like Minya, Godzilla's son, is going to collapse from exhaustion and cold. Godzilla finally shows a little bit of compassion and turns around and comforts his adopted offspring and holds him close to him. And as Goro remarks from the safety of the far out sea when they're being rescued by a submarine by this point, that it's okay, they're not going to die, they're just going to hibernate until the snow melts away, and it's a very sweet ending. Was that a good plot summary?
That was a pretty good synopsis, because the thing about this film is that it doesn't have so many story beats. We spend a long time on a few different things, which I appreciate, and I will talk about that, about how I appreciate there's slightly different story structure going on. But ask the question, Stephen.
Well, Ross, what did you think of this one?
Well,
are we in for a surprise?
No, absolutely not. I really enjoyed this film. So we said last time.
Sorry, just to interrupt you there. I so look forward to whatever the first one is that
I just hate.
That you're not going to enjoy, and I've looked ahead in my mind, and I don't know what it's going to be.
You don't know what it's going to be. Well, this could be fun.
Obviously, I really like every film I've watched so far, but there are films coming. I won't say when. That I am not so keen on. So, I mean, it'll be interesting.
And if that's true for you, then surely it'll be true for me.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I'm so interested to see what the first one you solidly don't like is.
I mean, that'd be fun. I would like to hear from my listeners, which ones, based on what you know from me so far, based on what you've kind of heard me say of the previous films, have a wee think. You don't necessarily need to tell me, but I want you to guess when you think what film will sort of be the one too far, the cut off.
If I might confess, I maybe thought it might be this one.
Really?
But then when I actually started to sit down and watch it, I thought, no, Ross is going to like this one. Ross is going to love this.
Well, what I will say, and I will elaborate on this later, I really enjoyed the film. I felt it was almost like a nice sister film to the previous film. It's like the second straight island adventure.
Yeah,
I like this
agree.
one because it takes all the elements that I like, that sort of playful attitude, and it keeps going with it. I feel that this one is almost like high fantasy, proper island fantasy.
Yeah.
Whereas the last one did have a lot of elements of that. This one is really going properly into the fantastic. And these guys are on a fantastic island where almost like anything is possible.
Yeah.
Whether it snows on a tropical island, like weather goes
Yeah, just the image of
topsy-turvy.
snow and palm trees.
It's
great.
It's so strange. But what I will say is that at the end of the synopsis there, you said that ending was very sweet. That ending freaked me out. And I will talk more about this, but I was watching it and I was going, wait, is this supposed to be a happy ending? This is horrible. This is, like, really upsetting to me. I was actually, like, in the throes of being sort of, like, emotionally affected and, like, touched.
Did you think they were going to die?
I mean, not necessarily that they were going to die, but at the end of the film, Maki sort of waves it off with the line, "Oh, don't worry, the snow will melt, they'll hibernate." And to me, that is not good enough. And I mean, yeah, there's an element of like environmentalism to it that is just like, I just have to question whether or not they have like ruined the topography of this island and how useful that will actually be to apparently solving world hunger. But we will get to all that. I think that it's a very strange ending, but I mean, I liked the film. I really did. I thought it was great, great fun. I really liked the ensemble, and as you guys know,
The cast of characters are great.
yeah, the cast of characters is great, and I just love that. That's all we get. We get our, what is it? It must be about 8 characters. Not
Yeah.
not
There's
many
a
more
solid.
than that.
Yeah, I think there's about 6 scientists. Then there's Maki and Psycho.
Aye, so just about 8, maybe
Yeah.
give or take. And we stick with them, and we really do not meet anyone else for the duration of the film. But I guess just starting from the start, right in the first few minutes, what I really liked about it is just, essentially we have this, like 3 or 4 minute prologue, essentially, that happens before the or after the credits, but happens before the titles. And I like that a lot because it's nice to have a story start essentially in media res. It's like it opens on what is essentially the typical Godzilla opening, but it uses it in shorthand. We have the plane already hitting rocky water. We don't need to see it hit that. We have a plane. We know it's military or science or whatever. It does not matter. They're in rough weather. We know exactly what's going to happen. Something's messing on the radar. What could it possibly be? And then looking out, well, the radar is a different issue. We learn later that is Godzilla's son. But out the window, in the ocean bed, there is Godzilla. And what I like about this is that it's like a crossing of paths. This prologue is not about Godzilla attacking and destroying a plane, and then we're going to investigate that and go from there. This plane just catches sight of Godzilla and essentially goes on their way.
And it's like it's a nice takeoff from what we've discussed in previous episodes, which is the sort of world building of these earlier Godzilla films, which, I mean, I'm not saying that this was some sort of grandmaster plan in the world building, but it's nice to see it because after you're right, the crew of this plane just happened to come across Godzilla, and after the initial shock of, oh my god, that's Godzilla, and after they realise that he's not there to get them, he's not after them, and he's just sort of making his way, and they're kind of blasé about it. Like the pilot just says, "Oh, was Godzilla the cause of the interference?" Like it was just, like they just encountered like a bird on radar
what did they
or
expect?
something.
They were flying over the ocean in the rain over uncharted territory. Of course they're going to discover something. Of course they're probably going to see Godzilla or something like that. It's sort of like, they know what to expect, things like that.
But I agree that pre-credit sequence is really nice.
Yeah.
And it's also the earliest Godzilla has yet shown up in a film.
Yeah, no, that's
like
the thing.
He's there right away.
we can cut all the crap. Essentially, we're using shorthand for this because what's important is where Godzilla's going, and essentially, just before the credits starts, one of the pilots or the passengers in the plane asks that question: "Where's Godzilla going?" or "Why is he going in that direction?" And it says something's calling him. Right off the bat of that, music starts.
Yeah.
Son of Godzilla. It answers our question.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's Godzilla going to do? Oh, he's going to go see his son.
Yeah.
And we don't know who that is or how that will work yet, but it sort of answered our immediate question as far as Godzilla's motives go. And what I like about the film is it is a film where Godzilla is definitely one of the main characters.
Yeah.
Whereas before he's been an antagonist, before he's been an ally or a sort of force of nature. In this film, he is one of the characters. And this is totally... In the past, we've had, like, the monster... the monster meeting, you know, we don't hear the dialogue of that, but we have a sort of much more anthropomorphized, humanized, in quotes, Godzilla talking to his other monsters. And here we get an extension of that. We have Godzilla having heart-to-heart bonding moments with his son. And we're not privy to what they're saying or what they're possibly directly communicating to each other, but we get let into, like, essentially Godzilla's private moments.
Yeah, his private life,
Yeah, his private life.
Where flies on the wall.
Yeah, and so I appreciate that opening to sort of set us up for that. It's not weird having three random strangers accidentally bump into Godzilla in the middle of the ocean, fly past him and as he walks away.
Yeah.
To me, that's perfect because that just tells us that no, in this film, Godzilla is not going to be destroying cities and tearing boats apart. He's looking for his son, and it's all about his son.
Yeah. And the fact that, bringing him back to the island, this film takes place exclusively on that island.
Yeah.
There's no sort of earlier sequence where the characters get to the island or like they get home at the end. It takes place entirely on and around that island.
I mean, that's what I mean by shorthand. It's just that we know sort of the regular beats of a Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a smart choice to just sort of slice those out. They're assumed. We know they'll get to the island. Like, typically we would maybe have a scene of Maki getting his assignment or discovering the base and maybe making arrangements with the plane to get there. But no, he just slap bang drops into the movie out of nowhere.
Literally.
Out of the blue. Which I really do appreciate. And there's so much shorthand. For example, the first time that... sorry, I have his name written down, but one of the scientists snaps, essentially, and takes his gun and threatens. We do not see that. We have a short scene. He expresses a little bit of discomfort with the mission in the short meeting scene when they're in the base.
Yeah.
And then the next time we see him, he's burst out the door with a gun and is threatening the rest of the cabin. We don't need to see his first initial decision to sort of turn on his teammates. We understand it. It's really good shorthand. So going off from there, I guess the next thing I would want to talk about is that base.
Yeah, it's great, and like, God knows how many times I've seen this film. But this is the first time I've watched it, and this occurred to me that it reminded me of sort of base under siege movies. Specifically, like a group of characters, typically a group of men who are there to research or protect, or are specifically stuck on a remote location or an island for a reason. They're stuck in a base and they basically have to battle the elements and outside aggressors. I'm talking things like Rio Bravo, Assault on Precinct 13, The Thing.
Oh, totally.
The original The Thing from Another World. Both films that came before and after this film.
Honestly,
I was really reminded of that kind of film this time watching it, and that's the first time that's occurred to me.
I mean, I will say, and this is almost vaguely irrelevant, but something that I love a lot is another television show that for some reason smacks so much of this film is, to me, Lost. And you don't watch this, Stephen, but I do, and I don't know how many of my listeners are fans of Lost or used to watch it or whatever, but there's just something about a group of people with an unknown, mysterious presence in the woods that frightens them, the smoke monster. And it's something about that open plan kitchen just sitting in the middle of the jungle and all their food laying out. And that's something that happens in Lost later on, is that they have their little island camp and it becomes very comfortable. They have a little kitchen, they hang out, they have dinner. It reminds me of that. There is that sense of just trapped on this mysterious, fantastical island. And that's the thing, is that's the through line, is the fantasy island kind of thing.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the sort of the fear of the woods and like the safety of the clearing in the middle of the woods or the forest or the jungle, because I really like that, and it's one of my favourite storytelling tropes in all of fiction, and it's such a primal fear, it's such a primal trope, I suppose. Fear of the forest.
Yeah.
It goes
and
back
the dark
to like
and
fear
the
of the
unknown.
dark, fear of the forest. It's like it's goes back to like fucking medieval poetry where the devil would reside in the woods. And if you went into the woods, you went in at your own risk.
Yeah.
God knows what you're going to encounter in there. Are you going to come back from the woods? And I mean, perhaps that's reading too much into Son of Godzilla, but that's doing the film a disservice to say something like that. And I really like that element because, yes, it is primal. Maybe it's old-fashioned, but you know what? It is still frightening. Like, fear of the unknown, fear of the dark, fear of the thing that's in the woods and is probably wanting to kill you.
From as far as the giant mantises go, once they've sort of been exposed to the radiation and they're huge, I love the giant mantises, but they're not necessarily scary. But the first time that we sort of catch a glimpse of it through the trees and you see almost like that pair of headlight eyes.
Yeah, you see two glowing orangey eyes. Yeah,
that is freaky. Yeah. That is scary. It's totally
and it
is that fear of the woods and the creature in the woods.
Yeah, like it's almost demonic imagery. And I agree, and like I love how the appearance of Kamacuras or Gigantus is teased.
Thanks for the correct terms.
The appearance of Kamacuras is teased because at the start, Kenji Sahara and Yoshio Tsuchiya's characters are going out to a communications tower to just sort of do routine maintenance.
Yeah.
And Yoshio Tsuchiya is lying against the stairs and he's dripping in sweat and he's wiping it off, and Kenji Sahara is just doing maintenance, etc. But then they just hear the sort of the hiss, the noise of Kamacuras, the sort of and we don't see it.
No.
Yoshio Tsuchiya pulls his gun, and there's that great sort of slow track as we move almost around the two of them, and they sort of move with the camera around, and he's pointing his gun just off camera, and we don't see what they're pointing it at. We don't know what they're pointing it at. All they say is, "It's back."
Yeah, and that's all we get for now, at least.
And that's really good. Like, the shot is great. The way some directors would be tempted to make that a series of shots, but Fukuda just makes it one as we follow their reactions and what they're following. Really, really impressed by that.
Going off by that, that comes right after the opening titles.
Exactly.
And I want to go back to my thing about shorthand, and I think that introduction of those two characters, who, if I'm right, it's who are the two scientists? They don't end up being. They're not our main scientists.
No. It's one of them is just sort of one of them, and the other is the one that goes a bit stir crazy and tries to murder them.
So they're sort of used more to be emblematic of the group of scientists. And I think that's one of the, so far, maybe actually one of the best character introductions for me, because again, it goes back to this idea of shorthand. No one's introduced in that scene. No one's, if I'm right, I mean, maybe the names are mentioned. It's certainly the professor is called the old man.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it does that thing in dialogue that I very much like, in that when you're speaking to someone, typically you're not reintroducing your friend or someone you've talked to. You tend to not address people directly by name. You tend to not restate what you're doing wherever you are.
Yeah.
You tend to just do it and talk about something else. And I feel that's essentially you get. You just spend a few minutes with these two scientists as they do a task. They have a brief discussion about how they don't even think it's worth doing. Or something along those lines. And you get so much understanding of not necessarily these two individuals, but just the scientists in general. That they're not they're not the scientists that we saw in the last film. They're not.
Yeah, they're not especially hero scientists.
Yeah, they're not immensely smart people, with the exception of perhaps maybe the professor. They're just normal people, essentially.
Yeah, they're there doing their job.
Yeah, and to go back to the base, to go back to the forest clearing, the contrast between the base as it stands when it's first introduced and when we first meet our scientists, and what happens to it after essentially the failed experiment, where the safety is gone and we have to flee to the caves and things like that. That contrast is really good, because the base as it stands when it's first introduced, it looks very safe. It doesn't look threatening. It doesn't look like the secret base that we saw in the last film.
Yeah, exactly.
We're seeing it from almost just the other side. We don't join people that discover this base, or the secret base in the forest. We start with the people that work there, and for them it is just a job. And the two guys on the comms, one of them says, why did I even come out here? They're just normal people that are doing a job. But the base, the design of the base is great. The labs, it's rich blues, it's reds, it's yellows. There's like a blue tube of electricity that's just pulsing in one of the labs. There's domes, and there's the sort of like flotation balls.
Yeah.
And then after that, once the sort of inclement weather and the sort of radiation has happened, it's all stripped. It's just stripped down to the bare metal. It's collapsed. It's detritus is strewed over the forest clearing. Everything's sort of fallen over. Nothing's safe. We've lost the comfort and the home safety of the base, really, as these sort of creatures have gotten bigger and everything is
exactly,
in.
Which makes our characters even more vulnerable to the outside forces. Their home base is gone, and over and above that, the aggressors are even more aggressive.
Yeah.
And there's more of them now. Speaking of said aggressors, is this a good opportunity to discuss our monsters in this film?
Yeah,
or do you want to finish up what you were?
Well, actually, before we jump onto the monsters, I guess I will just start on what I feel like the film talks about the environment and things like that. I'm not ready to approach the ending yet. I think the more that we chat and the closer that we get to the ending, we're sort of going chronologically. Once we get to the ending, I'll talk about that. But it is interesting because it is a fascinating idea to sort of like scientifically to like through your own technology like completely change your environment.
Yes.
To completely change the weather. And when the experiment fails essentially, and we get the first balloon containing a sort of freezing element rises up and bursts, they pump like a chemical into the air, and then they raise the radiation balloon, if I'm right. That's the process, and that goes off, and then what we have is these horrible inclement tropical thunderstorms that like water ravages through the island, it floods, and it's, to me, that was pretty intense.
Yeah.
Because it is just, to me, the thought is, wow, what have they done to this place? Like, that is a lot of power for these characters to be holding.
Yeah.
And again, we get...
Yeah, it does come back to the oft-repeated theme in the Godzilla films, which is, don't play God.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't mess with things that are beyond your control. But
certainly.
you were saying...
Well, I mean, I think that's basically where I was going, is that it does tie into that. So... And then the ending will do that in spades.
Yeah.
It will do that in spades. But yeah, so continuing on with our monsters.
Yeah, we have our monsters. So the monsters in this film are, of course, Godzilla, the heir to the throne, Minya, or Minilla, literally Mini Godzilla. I've always known them as Minya. But Minilla.
I quite like Manila.
You may... It never sounded right to me. Like, it never really rolled off the tongue properly.
I think that's the reason I like it, because I think just like Baby Godzilla, nothing's quite right.
Just don't call him...
That makes it better.
Just don't call him Godzuki.
It's
a different character.
It's a different character, because
And people often...
mistake them.
Yeah.
Because I will say that I don't have the context, but the name Godzuki is familiar to me vaguely.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not the same character.
Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
Right, okay, I'm right.
We have Godzilla, Minya, or Minilla. Kumonga, or Spaiga.
The big spider.
The big spider, eh?
Big spider,
So it is.
And then we have our three...
We have three
Gimantis.
Gimantis. Or
Kamacuras.
Kamacuras, yes,
Kamacuras.
indeed.
Kamacuras.
Kamacuras.
Yeah, so I guess first, should we talk about... Well, let's maybe talk about our Gimantis first, maybe.
Sure thing.
Yeah.
Gimantis, as it's known in the US dubs, or Kamacuras. Kamacuras looks great. I really like... This is following in the tradition of Mothra. In this film, Kamacuras and Kumonga neither are portrayed by a performer in a suit.
Yeah,
they're all marionettes.
Yeah,
they're puppets. And they look great. The wire manipulation is excellent. I actually think on Kumonga the spider especially, but Gimantis, Kamacuras, whatever, looks great. All three of them look really great. That scene where Godzilla faces off with three of them is great.
Yeah, I think
the toy with the boulder between their pincers.
Totally. Just as a feeling, I think the fight against the Kamacuras, I think they're so satisfying to see beat up. Because of the marionette stuff, because of their movements, I think they're one of the most satisfying creatures so far that I have seen Godzilla batter. When he sort of throws them over his shoulder, there's sort of this perfect floppiness that when they hit the ground, it just is so satisfying when he just crashes one of them against the ground.
They look floppy and not such a great threat or a great weight, but you still have a little bit of a oof when they smack against the ground.
And there's a really good shot of when it's almost like over the shoulder of Godzilla firing his atomic fire against one of the mantises that sort of jumps towards him. And that shot was great because it's just it's like a real-time shot. You just see him get hit by it and crash to the ground all in one shot, just sort of exploding in fire. It was really good.
Yeah, and in that scene, Godzilla dispatches 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
Gimantis.
One of whom sort of scuttles away to
be later murdered by Kumonga. Kumonga, or Spaiga, again, looks great.
Yeah.
I think, when I was a kid, Spaiga just... Kumonga... I knew him first as Spaiga.
Yeah.
But Kumonga... The big spider. Tarantula. Really, really impressed me because at that time I was still kind of like, how the fuck did they do this?
Yeah, because you get a real big spider.
Because it's easier in these days of DVD and Blu-ray. I mean, we watched this on the 2004, I think it was 2003, 2004 TriStar DVD, and that's a really nice print, but it has got a lot of it does expose wires and strings a lot. But when I was little, I watched this on VHS, obviously, and you don't see wires on that, and I just thought, how the hell did they do this? It looked real to me. It really looked real. And Kumonga still impresses me. The wire manipulation is so good. And there's a scene near the end where Godzilla charges it, and it rises up on its legs and makes itself taller. And it's a really frightening enemy as well.
Yeah, totally. Because I think what this film does very, very well is characterize all of its monsters. Yeah. And we will get to Godzilla's son. We will get to Manila. But at least I'll say what you want, but that is certainly a characterized monster. The personality of Manila shows leaps.
You're definitely correct.
Yeah,
we will get to that. But first, we'll discuss Godzilla himself.
Yeah.
I didn't mind it so much this time. But this is my least favourite Godzilla suit.
Yeah, the costume. I'll say it doesn't look great.
No,
it's fine.
He looks kind of frog featured. He's got a very dome-like, but also a very flat face. His usually sort of protruding snout looks like it's been punched in a bit.
Yeah,
it's got a bit of a squashed face.
A little bit more human, maybe?
A little bit more human. He's got big, kind of chubby cheeks and a small dome-like
head. He's put on dad weight. That was put on parent. That's honestly, that was my little discussion to myself when I was watching it. It was like, I don't think the suit is particularly great, or not as good as some of the ones that we've seen before. But what I do like about the Godzilla that we see is that he does sort of just look much more like a Godzilla that's built for parenting.
He's put on baby weight.
Yeah, and a Godzilla that is not the creature that destroys and crushes that we've heard so much about.
Yeah, this is far from the creature that destroyed Tokyo in 1954.
This is Godzilla that's just trying to nurture and raise a child. And yeah, so he's a bit pudgier. He's softer around the edges.
It has been my least favourite suit for a while, but I must admit, watching it this time, I didn't mind it so much. It's just in close-ups, it looks really bad. At certain angles, it looks good, but sort of when it's filmed from low angles and it looks really bad.
Yeah, there is one shot of Godzilla in this movie that I really, really like, and it's just when Godzilla makes his first appearance on the island. So he rises up out of the water, and Psycho and Maki see him. And
it's not Psycho and Maki. It's I'm just being a pedant here, but it's Yoshio Tsuchiya and Akihiko Hirata's characters. Because remember, Tsuchiya's character goes a bit stir crazy and goes, "I'm swimming home."
Thank you, Stephen.
I'm swimming home.
That's
and
right.
Hirata goes
I'm
after
totally
him, and
wrong,
it's Godzilla. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, no, you're totally right.
You
but,
ignorant fool.
Right, I quit. I'm sorry, everyone. I know we were going to try and get all 30 done.
That's
but
fine. Have you seen these listener submissions? I can cherry pick anyone I want
and just get someone else to record them.
Exactly.
But anyway,
ever heard of Skype?
Woo. The Schism will both be starting our own podcast now, so you've got to choose. You can only choose one.
Hashtag Team Steven, hashtag Team Ross. Kaijusaurus Podcast, Civil War.
No, but anyway, this shot of Godzilla, it's Godzilla in the water, in the distance. It's a very wide shot, it's kind of high up, and then just essentially in the bottom right corner, we can just see a tiny bit of beach, and to scale, we have our two scientists.
Yeah.
And it's a great shot.
That's really nice.
I really like the shots where we get like a human direct experience with Godzilla. That someone sees him directly, face to face, not in the distance over a hill, just straight ahead, sort of taking in.
Oh no, I totally agree.
The height and the size of him.
That shot always stands out to me as well.
Yeah, it's a
Another
really
shot
good
I love, which is similar to that one, is when after Godzilla lights one of the Kamakiras on fire. Akira Kubo and Kenji Sahara are running away, but suddenly one of the flaming limbs of the Kamakiras soars overhead and lands in front of them, and it's like, get back!
Yeah, no, totally.
That's great. Last but certainly not least, Minya, the son of Godzilla, the heir to the king of the monsters.
Bless him.
What do you think of Minya or Minilla or Minira?
I mean, I'm sure you'll tell me what the sort of general consensus of the character is, and you'll tell me maybe what changes in future iterations. We'll see. Okay, maybe. Here's how I feel about the titular son of Godzilla, is that, yes, the costume doesn't look great. Yes, he's really annoying. Yes, he throws like ridiculous little tantrums. Yes, he's essentially like a shithead. Yes, he makes like really weird noises. It shouldn't. Like watching Son of Godzilla and seeing the son, it shouldn't work, but it really did work for me. I really like Manila a lot. I think it's, once you sort of understand what they're doing with this film, and once you sort of put away your expectations maybe and go, okay, well, I guess Godzilla is much more paternal. I guess we're going to just spend a lot of time with Godzilla and their children.
Yeah, well, that's a misconception with a lot of Godzilla fans in the Western world anyway, is that like Minya, or by extension this film, is not meant to be taken entirely seriously. Like Minya especially is clearly almost 100% played for the laughs.
Yeah.
Every scene, there's some sort of comic, unfortunate thing happens to it.
I cracked a joke when we were watching it. I cracked a joke because this is Psycho and
Goro.
And Goro. They encounter each other in the woods. They look over the hill, and there is Manila coming over the hill, and he looks like Hans Moleman from The Simpsons. He's doing this slow, awful walk. He's really short. He's got like bow legs. It cracks Steven up a lot. Words. It looks like Hans Moleman from The Simpsons.
That did make me laugh a lot. And
another one.
It's even funnier because, just quickly, it's even funnier because in that scene, Goro says, "It's Godzilla!" And I just said, "It's not.
It's not. It's definitely
clearly
not." The other one was that there was a really sort of grotesque close-up of Manila.
It's after Manila manages to breathe his radioactive fire for the first time, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
And he kind of looks jubilant and kind of goes,
and yeah, his little donut fires are really cute. there's another grotesque shot, just on the funny comparisons thing. This is not a particularly relevant point, but he really looked like Peter Lorre at one point. It looked like a weird, like, crumpled flesh version of actor Peter Lorre. But no, I'll say that it worked for me.
I actually like Minya.
Yeah,
Minya's
Minya's
fun.
cute.
And there's a lot more to Minya's design, I think, that I have appreciated through the years, because, like, he doesn't really resemble an infantile member of Godzilla's species.
No.
But something I noticed this time in particular, right? Godzilla's skin is very... in a lot of close-ups we see it's very rough.
Yeah.
And it's ragged. It looks
Rocky.
hard. It looks like charcoal. Mm-hmm. It looks damaged.
Yeah.
Whereas Minila's skin looks kind of smooth. It doesn't look entirely damaged or broken. It looks it's about as smooth as a monster like that can. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to say, maybe that's because it's a newborn. But I was thinking about it this time and I thought, maybe, you know what, like, Godzilla's been, like, fucking irradiated since that's his whole thing. He's completely irradiated. He's mutated from radioactivity.
So much abuse from humanity. So many bullets.
And, like, whereas Minya is a newborn. He's not been exposed to radioactivity, depending on your reading of Godzilla's species as a sort of character. Are they inherently radioactive or... No, who knows? But yeah, Minya's not been exposed to this, so yeah, his skin is smooth, and
yeah, and you can go wider with that point. That's why he's an innocent. That's why he's so bumbling and not threatening and so silly and cute and scared.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have to be like Godzilla. Because no one's trying to shoot him.
But yeah, actually, like, obviously when I was a kid, I kind of like Minya. Then when you go through your sort of early teen Godzilla fan years,
you're too cool. Are you too cool for Minya?
You think you're angsty and you only like GMK. GMK is a future film.
Sounds.
You only really like GMK and you only like the dark films and you hate Minya and you pretend all the films are corny but you love them anyway. No, I fucking love Minya, man. Minya's great. And without giving too much away, you ain't seen the last of him.
Sound. I'm totally fine with that. But yeah, no, I think it gives, as I've always said, I love that our Godzilla films do things completely differently each film, that we get total contrasts, that we get completely different styles, interpretations of Godzilla as a character as well, and this is one of those. This is our chance to see, as I've always said, just the private Godzilla, his private relationship with his son, and it's kind of heartwarming. It's nice, and it goes back to this idea that we have our scientists who are sort of struggling against the forces of nature. They're not struggling against any sort of individual human or anything like that. Typically, some of our human stories in the past have been, the antagonists have been greedy people, villainous people. I mean, even our last island adventure, our antagonists were this terrorist organization that were sort of like corrupting the island. Here, it's not quite that good and evil. Sort of everyone in that film is... No one's evil, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could argue that the mantises are antagonists, but they're just sort of mantises.
Yeah.
They're not really...
They're fucking irradiated fauna.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is the fault of the scientists.
Yeah, exactly. And
they have wrought their own horrors.
Yeah, and they're struggling against that, but they're not particularly villainized. And so, it's nice to see a film where, as far as Godzilla's concerned, all he really cares about is raising his son.
Yeah.
Right? He's just discovered over the course of the last few days that, well, he has a son, so, well, may as well try your best, eh?
Ross, are you up for some Minya trivia?
Can you do me as well? Yes.
Good.
Yeah, hit me, please.
Some Minya trivia. Minya was portrayed by...
I meant to ask this.
Yeah, Minya was portrayed by a novelty pro wrestler from Japan at the time. He was a little person who was known as Little Man Machan, or Machan the Dwarf. Novelty wrestler. And he portrayed Minya a few more times.
Okay, well that's good.
Because did you sort of assume he was played by a child?
No, I didn't necessarily. I didn't assume he was played by a child. I knew. I think more I'm not quite aware of the scales at which these films are made.
Yeah.
So I don't really have a concept of
Yeah.
how tall people actually are on the camera. So I wasn't necessarily thinking about anything like that. I did want to ask you who was in the suit though, so now I know.
Little Man Machan, a novelty wrestler.
That's great. Did they also wrestle while doing this, or was this a full-time thing by this point?
No, I believe he wrestled on top of this. That he was just suitable to play this character. Yeah, totally. A smaller kaiju,
and just stuck with it. But you know, keeping on with the Minilla and Godzilla thing, while their relationship, just while we're there. Yeah, I mean, I think the sort of real emotional thread of this movie is that little burgeoning relationship, and by the end of the movie, the father and son are teaming up.
Yeah, because Godzilla does show a lot of reluctance to raise Minilla through this film. That there is physical abuse. There's if we spoke Godzilla's language, I'm sure there's vocal abuse. There we go. That's the word. So yeah, it isn't like an altogether healthy adoption. But yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, I don't really read Minya as Godzilla's biological son. No, I think he's just some member of the same species that's ended up somehow being born.
That makes sense. That makes maybe more sense to me. I didn't necessarily have a real answer to how precisely and when he was.
Yeah, I don't
when
read
this egg was laid.
I
assume.
Yeah, I don't read Minilla as the biological offspring of Godzilla, and
it's
I mean,
not particularly necessary.
You should see the forum topics on this subject.
Is it hot? Is it?
You know what? I'm not going to get into the issue of Godzilla's gender, because I know he's named the king of the monsters, and usually we use male pronouns. But see, at the end of the day, I'm just not here to debate Godzilla's gender. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right there, and I will say, I mean, that's the sort of assumption that I made, and that I've been using.
You can read Godzilla as whatever you want it to be. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Totally.
Because, my God,
you don't need to worry.
Argue something more worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds about right. I mean, that's a sort of... Everyone's happy.
Yeah, exactly.
You can just enjoy your film. Enjoy the film.
You soon see how many sexists are in the Godzilla fan base when you start to refer to Godzilla as anything but a he.
I can
that
imagine.
out, but I don't know. No, I'll keep that in.
It's a good call out. Good call out.
Keep that
That's
in.
what we're here for, guys.
Kaijusaurus Podcast.
Tell it like it is.
I'm going to drop the mic now.
Please don't. That cost us £17.
£20 when postage and packaging is taken into account.
Thank you very much.
What we're moving on to next?
Well, I sort of wanted to... I don't think I've chatted too much about my favourite topic, the human characters. Basically, I mean, I've not got too much to say about this, just that I really, really enjoyed the character of Goromaki.
Yeah, he's great.
From his initial entrance, his sort of like little determined face, he's got this cute, soft little face. He's lovely, he's great. He is just fun to watch. What's the actor's name?
Akira Kubo.
And
Kubo has such a likable energy.
I mean, the same was true of Astro Monster as well.
Yeah.
No, he's great to watch. And the chemistry with Seiko.
Psycho.
The chemistry of Psycho is wonderful, and the actress playing Psycho is...
God, I can't remember her name. I can never remember her name specifically. Beverly Maida.
And Beverly Maida. Their relationship through the film, I know I just said that the through line was Godzilla and Minilla, but the other through line is definitely this nice, cute little burgeoning relationship between... bloody hell.
These two characters.
Yeah, between Maki and Psycho, these two human characters. And it's nice to have...
I see it as a romance, a bit of a romance.
It's certainly a romance. Or like, sort of platonic love, or like, not necessarily romantic love, but they definitely find the love for each other and an understanding and an awareness of each other's sort of like inner lives. And a nice thing I thought that I'm going to say is intentional is that they have a matching colour scheme or a sort of clashing colour scheme. The first time we see Psycho, she's in this sort of torn island dress of red and yellow.
Reddish orangey,
Yeah, and it's a bit of red in the middle and a yellow all over. And when we first see Maki, he's in his yellow sort of shirt with his red life vest that he keeps on.
Yeah.
And then vice versa, by the end he is wearing reds, and he's wearing his yellows, and he's
wearing what was his shirt.
Yeah, exactly, and she's keeping the reds, and you have this nice little red-yellow colour contrast that just sort of keeps through the entire film.
No, I agree.
And again, I've said this before, and we said this last time, just talking about costume design and stuff with Jun Fukuda. But again, the costume design for this film is great.
Oh yeah, it's lovely.
Like, everyone looks fantastic, and especially when Psycho, at one point, once they sort of move to the caves and they're helping the injured, fever-ridden scientists, and Psycho has changed into, like, the scientist's, like, white crop trousers and has tucked in one of the Hawaiian shirts. Yeah. She looks fantastic.
Yeah, she does actually.
Everyone looks great in those films. I think like the fashion in these films is absolutely wonderful. Like, it's inspiring. I'm, as someone that has been partial to Hawaiian shirts in the past, you know,
you never would have guessed it, would you?
I know, you really wouldn't surprise you.
You do look good in a Hawaiian shirt.
I do. I mean, that's the thing. And Jun Fukuda has inspired me for this summer to whip out the collection again.
Do we have anything else to discuss?
Yeah,
because we usually like to discuss the music. Because you seem to enjoy the work of Masaru Sato, who you previously heard in Ebira, Horror of the Deep.
Yeah, no, certainly. I don't have anything specific to say about the music so much. Everything, I feel that for the most part, the music it's very playful. It really does set the tone.
Yeah,
I like it a lot.
That's the best word to use for it. Very playful score.
And I do really love the contrast of that opening shot of the film. Darkness, rain, the plane, this, oh shit, is Godzilla going to destroy this plane kind of feeling. And then going straight into daylight, credit sequence, sort of jaunty, playful, summery island music, which we are familiar with from Ebra as well. And as I say, my same thoughts about that style of music and how it's sort of new and unusual for a Godzilla film, I think that still applies.
Oh, I totally agree.
I'm looking through my notes now, and I don't really have too much to say apart from just sort of approaching the end.
We'll talk this ending then.
Yeah, we'll talk this ending. So yeah, in the end,
I like the ending. I think it's a lot.
No, I mean, I think it is a sweet ending. I think we have when Godzilla finally sort of picks up Manila.
Yeah.
Helps him up. That's a really, really tender moment.
Yeah.
And
the music underscores it nicely.
Yeah. But I just sort of think that watching them get buried in the snow together is like tragic.
It's like the end of The Shining.
Yeah, it really is. It's like upsetting to me. It's
Stanley Kubrick ripped off Son of Godzilla.
Yeah, no, totally. I can absolutely.
And Stephen King.
I stand by that. Put my name on that.
Get a t-shirt printed.
But no, I think it's like kind of tragic. I realise that, as I say, Maki
says, don't worry.
Oh, don't worry, it's fine, the snow will melt and they'll be just fine, they'll hibernate. But it's like, I sort of mourn the lost time that these guys are going to have. That they're going to have to go hibernate, but they've just sort of reached like a level of understanding, like a bond. They have more to grow together,
but
they have more to learn
have
together.
To hibernate because, once again, of what man has forced upon them.
Mm-hmm, exactly, that once again Godzilla has to go into hiding, and the son of Godzilla has to join him. Has to go as well. It's already happened.
Experiencing the hardships of what it means to be Godzilla.
And to be fucked about by humans that you have nothing to do with.
But I like the ending because I like seeing Godzilla finally consent to properly taking care of Minya.
No, I mean, that's the thing.
It's nice. And like the only moment I actually
feel... Oh,
sorry.
Let you go. We're so polite.
After you. No, after me.
After you.
It really tugs at me a little bit when Minya's just sort of struggling through the snow, and then finally falls to his knees, then he falls on his hands, and he kind of reaches after Godzilla, and it looks like Godzilla's just going to go, but then he finally turns around and gives him a big old hug.
Oh, yeah, nice. No, I mean, that tender moment is beautiful, but when Manila is
But the
struggling.
circumstances
But
of it.
it's the circumstances. I spent my entire time rooting for the scientists. I'm really glad that they were going to get off the island. I was really glad that, you know what, they were going to just try and get their experiment done one more time. But to watch that poor creature freezing in the snow, like dropping to its knees, and pulling itself across.
This newborn, it was born like
A
yesterday.
newborn, yeah, pulling itself across the ground. It was like really upsetting.
Yeah.
And the thing that I noticed that I did think was interesting is that he's back on the ground, just crawling with his hands, sort of like immobilized.
Yeah.
In exactly the same way that he was sort of hatched.
Yeah.
And at that point, at that hatching, Godzilla was not there. And once he did get there, he was not particularly helpful, not particularly parental, yeah. But we sort of get a repeat of that same moment.
Yeah.
That the Son of Godzilla has sort of regressed back to this hatching state, back on the ground, crawling again, not able to like move,
defenseless,
sort of immobile. And now Godzilla is present. Godzilla helps, presents a helping hand, happy to help no matter what. So yeah, it is a really lovely moment between these two creatures, framed in for what is me like an upsetting environmental question mark.
Well, I mean, it's funny you say that you were rooting for the scientists the whole time. Just thinking about it now, I mean, it probably is a very hot island, regardless. But every obstacle they face in this film is of their own doing.
Yeah,
they irradiate the mantises. Mm-hmm. They awaken Kumonga. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess Godzilla was coming anyway, but it was the mantises that unearthed the egg.
Yeah, exactly.
It was
Godzilla. If the mantises hadn't been sort of giantified, Godzilla surely would have just reached the egg.
Yeah, and maybe he and Minya might have left.
Yeah, they wouldn't have to fight their way out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, so I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's an interesting thing to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Is that,
as much as we like them, they are playing God.
It's, because they're not necessarily it's not their fault, but they are at fault.
Yeah, they're probably good people, but they're not necessarily doing good science.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not mad scientists.
No,
in the traditional sense.
No,
but they're not typically conducting good science either.
Yeah.
They're trying to.
It's irresponsible.
Yeah, it's an irresponsibility. Yeah, well, scientific irresponsibility, one of the recurring themes of this series.
Yeah, I think it does actually hammer that point very well and very subtly. I would say that is definitely the vibe that I got from this film. Is it asking us to question some of these scientific advancements and the idea that of progress in general, and that, you know,
where do we put a cap on this?
Yeah, and ask, is there a place to put a cap on that? And
I
mean, and obviously we don't have to get far too much into it, but there's parallels between changing a place's sort of like weather so much that it suddenly becomes engulfed in snow, and global warming is obviously a thing that comes up. And
it's even more
relevant
potent now.
And I guess that speaks to the Godzilla series' sort of continual relevance.
Yeah, well, I totally agree. And even Godzilla 2014 had something of an environmental message. Mm-hmm. But I think that's actually a really, unless you have anything else, that's a great place to wrap up our discussion.
Yeah, I have one last thing.
Okay.
I would like you, dear listeners, to picture the Son of Godzilla. Picture him standing there, kind of short, stout, little chubby. Picture him in red Speedos. This came to my mind when I was watching the film.
God.
I just thought it was a very funny image. That's it. Delete this, Stephen.
Or like a swimming cap.
And a swimming cap. That's it. That's completely irrelevant. But yeah, no, that I think we sort of wrapped up everything that
that was an excellent
discussion.
Yeah, that was a good discussion. So, well, as always, I'll never say discuss again.
I'll get some water while you do that.
That's fine. As always, listeners, when we get to this stage, I report back to Ross after we've heard his opinion, after we heard my opinion, how this film is generally perceived within the fandom at large, or at least the Western fandom. You could probably guess, Ross. This film, much like Ebirah Horror of the Deep last time, I don't think it's anyone's favourite. It's not particularly loved. It's not particularly disliked. It's just sort of. I think it's a solid 3-star affair. Although I think it sometimes leans towards more disliked than liked, and I think that's down to Minilla himself. But I
understand that.
I think that attitude is actually really ironically immature, because this film is clearly catered more towards younger audiences, and sometimes people, even Godzilla fans, sometimes need to remember that maybe their demographic specifically is not the target. It's not made for them sometimes, but that's just one man's opinion. So yeah, I think Son of Godzilla is liked.
Generally, yeah. No, I mean, I would agree with that. And I think it's definitely a film that I enjoyed, and a film that I didn't know what to expect from the title, and obviously you told me last week. And that because of the much more like personal nature of how we see Godzilla, and because I really, really did like our two human characters quite a lot, and just how complete everything felt. It's all on this island. I'm inclined to rate it like quite highly. I'm inclined to, well, you know, if I split it between the films that I have that I lean strongly towards and the ones that I'm not too hot on, it's definitely in the first pile, and I'm quite pleased with it. I like it quite a bit.
Well, we're actually thinking of doing a series in review so far episode. We're thinking of doing a sort of recap episode. But here's a question. We'll do a mini recap at the moment. Here's a question we haven't actually discussed before. The original aside, what's been your favourite so far?
I would need to have like a list of them.
Okay. I can rattle them off quickly for you.
Rattle them off.
Godzilla Raids Again, King Kong vs. Godzilla, Mothra vs. Godzilla, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, Invasion of Astro Monster, Ebirah Horror of the Deep, Son of Godzilla.
Dear me, I've watched that many of them. Well, here's the thing. I'm not going to throw... I would maybe want to write like a list. I might wait a little bit and write it properly. So this is not a final answer or anything. So I'm not going to rattle them off. But I will say that the one that I probably, right off the bat, my least favourite, and by no means hated in any way...
Godzilla Raids Again.
Yeah, Godzilla Raids Again. It's fine. It was okay.
It's a fine film. That's it.
But... let me take a while and think properly a bit more and sort of revisit the films, and I can let you guys know precisely where my thoughts land.
Yeah, well, like I said, we're thinking of doing a sort of journey so far episode.
Just a wee one, a wee ranking.
Might be fun, yeah. We have some submissions of thoughts.
Not user submissions.
They're listeners.
As always, guys.
Fan
mail.
Always,
gang, thank you very much for your submissions. It's a real pleasure to have so many of them.
It is.
Keep sending them in. We'll keep reading them out. We'll keep highlighting them. Okay.
But we might have to start limiting them soon. That's a bit of...
we may not... we love to read from them, but we may not start reading them out all in whole. We may sort of cherry pick your guys' best few things, just because
the episodes are getting longer.
Yeah, they're getting longer and longer, and that's not your guys' fault. That's our fault. We have too much to say.
That's our fault for just talking so much shit.
But yeah, no. As always, guys, keep sending them in. We really do love them.
God, that was such an apologist way of saying, please shorten your comments, wasn't it? Yeah, that was a very.
If you also want to call us arseholes in your comments, please feel free.
Or if you're American. Assholes. Or
any other swear word or insult from where you're from.
But please let us know. What's your favourite swear word?
Unrelated. This is a family show.
This is listed as explicit on iTunes.
Well,
it has to be because we swear.
We do swear. Let's wear that crown. But anyway.
Our first fucking submission is from Christopher Stewartson, who is a regular submitter to the podcast. I'll start this one, but if you want to tag me in at any point, feel free, because it's a bit of a long one. Which is fine, of course. There's more meat to it. But
that's fine.
Anyway. Hi, Stephen and Ross, writes Chris. Apologies for having not greeted you on my Ghidorah submission, Ross. I hope all can be forgiven.
It can.
He's saying that, but He's seething with rage right now. He's mouthing the words.
I'm not.
Fuck you, Christopher.
You are forgiven. I have love in my heart for you.
Christopher continues, Son of Godzilla, where to begin? Son of Godzilla is a peculiar entry in the series, not because of its content or quality as a film, but because of how it's received by critics and fans alike. The film seems to be in a strange grey area, where of all the entries in the series, it seems to be overlooked, despite how really quite good it is. Agreed. I'll preface my submission by explaining that Son of Godzilla was my first Godzilla film. I remember the night I came home from school at age 6 or 7 and finding that my mum had bought me a VHS copy of the film. That night, my family and I watched it, and I was hooked forever. I was already into monster movies, 50s creature features in particular, and my mum had enjoyed the 60s Godzilla films herself, and I thought I'd enjoy it. She couldn't have been more right. I adore Son of Godzilla. Having not seen it for several years because of the Sony DVD having skyrocketed in price. That's the one we watched. I got it when it first came out. First smart move. Sorry, Chris. I was glad to finally receive a digital copy of the Japanese cut this past summer. You're going to get this podcast in trouble! Oh. I was strangely cautious, thinking that perhaps the film wouldn't live up to the high quality I remembered it having. I was very happy when the film surpassed what I remembered. It has such an interesting and engaging narrative, one that, whilst being fantastical, genuinely works. Which you discussed, Roz.
Yeah, no, totally.
You don't feel as though you're watching a story that's unrealistic, despite how fantastic it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'd argue that Son of Godzilla was almost the perfect mixture for a Godzilla film at the time. Even now, I'd argue that Son of Godzilla holds up better as a film than most of the Millennium efforts, and certainly better than the Heisei efforts past Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. The Millennium films refer to the films produced between 1999 and 2004.
Right.
Whereas the Heisei films refers to films produced between 1984 and 1995.
Right, okay.
So that's our 2 series after this one.
Yeah, okay.
Chris continues, as it stands, there seems to be a growing number of fans and non-fans alike that only watch the series for its monsters. That alone would be okay if so many of these people didn't belittle the stories and characters of the series in order to justify their points, claiming that the characters are dull and the stories are weak. I find it difficult to comprehend that someone would be uninterested in the characters and human drama of Son of Godzilla. I'm sure you'd agree with that, Ross?
Yeah, totally.
I
always agree with that.
We have such a great range of characters, from the on-edge Furukawa, played by the excellent Yoshia Tsuchiya, the stubborn yet positive Goro, played by Akira Kubo, the firm but not unkind Dr. Kusumi by Tadao Takashima, and of course the survivalist Psycho, played by Bibari Maeda, also known as Beverly. Having such a selection of different personalities really helps the film in terms of audience engagement. One has several ways in which to engage with them. Ultimately, it makes it more satisfying when all of the characters have to pull together in the film's final act, because it's been established how different they are from one another. Whilst the soundtrack may seem like a departure from even his score on Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, Masaru Sato certainly delivers a score that is as memorable as it is fitting. There are times when it appropriately plays up the playful nature of Minya and Psycho, though Sato's score really shines whenever Godzilla, Kamacuras or Kumonga appear. The special effects are spectacular. Kamacuras marionettes look wonderful, and their integration with the human cast has been creatively and realistically achieved. From composite shots that display the humans as ants compared to the monstrous Kamacuras, to low-angle effect shots where trees dominate the foreground to show the scale of the Kaiju. The special effects are some of the best of the Showa era. One particular special effects shot that always has stuck with me is when Godzilla emerges from the ocean and moves moves from the left of the frame,
you and me both, Chris,
from the sea to the right and into the jungles of the island. Perhaps it is the lighting, or perhaps it's how the shot has been slowed down, but whatever it is, that shot seems as realistic to me now as it did when I was 7. Son of Godzilla is arguably one of the most visually impressive entries in the Showa series. It has a gorgeous lush green colour palette that really sells the tropical island location, much more so than Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster.
I would say even more so.
Well,
so we don't agree on that, Chris.
Of course, an issue for a lot of fans is the Godzilla suit. It's true, the 1967 Godzilla suit really isn't, well, aesthetically pleasing. And yet, I can't bring myself to dislike it. Maybe I'm just being nostalgic. Then there's Minya. I can't not address Minya because it's Minya. Despite the hellish following that Minya has gained on the internet, particularly on Tumblr, I really wouldn't ever condemn this film because of him. I don't think Minya taints the film. Of course, he looks goofy and allegedly adorable, but it's understandable. The film was being made at a time when Godzilla's audience demographic was getting younger and younger. Even then, Minya is not a terrible aspect of the film. His comedic moments, such as when he climbs on Godzilla's tail, don't seem out of place, and moments like that either genuinely work or aren't really problems. I agree. Overall, Son of Godzilla is superb, concludes Chris. From a great set of characters, an interesting narrative, a fantastic score by Sato, impressive special effects, Son of Godzilla deserves more recognition than it currently receives.
Yeah, no, I think, Chris, you and I have pretty similar opinions on
Yep.
that. I think you could have done this. Okay, next up we have Tumblr user Britlowski, who says, Son of Godzilla was the first appearance of Kamacuras and Kamonga. Kamakura is a dangerous nuisance, where Kamonga is a gigantic version of one of the world's most feared creatures. SOG, Son of Godzilla, provided two of the most reliable stock monsters for all things Godzilla, specifically in the novels.
There were tie-in novels in the 90s.
Right, okay.
They're pretty good.
They appeared in Godzilla Invades America together, where Kamacuras would pick up Kamonga and fly when they had to flee. That sounds dreadful. I do not want to see that. That's frightening. As well as Kamacuras making a devastating show of force in Godzilla 2000 by Mark Cerasini.
There is also a film called Godzilla 2000, but we are discussing the novel here. Britlowski is discussing the novel Godzilla 2000. Unrelated.
When I say stop monsters, Britlowski continues, I imply not that they are cheap, easy cop-outs, but that so much can be done with them, that they're possibly the best general-purpose Godzilla foes, allies, neutral monsters. I myself am employing them in my own Godzilla writing as well.
Cool.
While Son of Godzilla, while kind of a funky one-off film in Britlowski's personal opinion, gave us not only adorable Minya,
Right,
but
okay. Britlowski, your eyes checked.
gave us not only the adorable Minya, but two of the most easily understandable monsters that the Godzilla stable would be lacking without. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I'm sort of pleased to hear that Kamonga and Kamakura will make future appearances.
Yep, you'll see them again.
In films as well as the novels?
In films.
Okay, well that's good to know.
Our next submission comes from my good friend Alex Gehart. Alex says, what a great film this is. I mean, let me go ahead and get the one negative thing out of the way. Godzilla and Minya look awful. Jesus! Anyway, the film works in the same way Sea Monster does. What is the primary plot? A scientific effort to control climate and solve world hunger, but it takes place in a world of monsters. The casual way in which everyone regards the Kaiju is wonderful. An early example is the Kamacuras, who, even at their smallest, are incredibly large creatures. Even when the mystery of the mysterious brainwaves is solved, they just continue to focus on the experiment. Fukuda really knows how to make these films move, and Sato's score here is just as well done and effective as his score for Sea Monster. I also really want to point out the fantastic wire work for Kamacuras and Kumonga. These are the most fluid and well-realised wirework kaiju in the entire franchise. Although the 2003 Mothra, getting a bit ahead of ourselves here, Ross.
Oh dear.
The 2003 Mothra, as seen in Godzilla Tokyo SOS, is right up there with them. It's also great that both Kamacuras and Kumonga have ever-present sounds that are distinct and warn the audience of danger. I especially like the clicking and clacking of the Kamacuras' maw. I mentioned my distaste for the Minya/Goji designs, but everything else about the Minya plot works for me. It works really well to connect the humans to the Kaiju shenanigans on the island. I especially love Kumonga's attack on the cave, and the finale as they struggle to complete their experiment while the monsters tussle above them. The cast here is a best of Tadao Takashima, Akihiko Hirata, Akira Kubo, and my second favourite role of his.
What's your first?
Probably Invasion of Astro Monster.
Probably.
I say that with confidence, Alex. I know you will. And of course, Yoshio Tsuchiya, who has to lose his mind and threaten the lives of the team. Alex concludes, all in all, this is definitely one of the best Showa films, and definitely a great Godzilla film.
Perfect, yeah, no,
Agreed.
I totally agree. Where you say that there's a good connection between the humans and the kaiju stuff, I totally agree. And I think one of my favourite parts of the film is where Psycho sort of first encounters Minya and sort of has that cute back and forth feeding him bit. I think that's really nice.
That's nice, yeah.
And I sort of just like the sort of fondness that Maki and Psycho have for Minya. You know, they sort of peer at him from a few different parts in the film, and it's quite nice to see. But yeah, no,
Agreed.
Okay, so our next post here comes from Tumblr user Bluskream.
Or is it Blue Scream?
It might be Blue Scream. But here's what they say. Son of Godzilla was my favourite movie growing up. Kumonga and Gigantus, sorry, American here, were the coolest monster designs to my eyes. And who wouldn't want Godzilla to be their dad? Looking back at it today, the plot is really silly and Manila will forever be tainted by all monsters attack.
That's a future film.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
So maybe it's not at the top of my list anymore, but I still enjoy Son of Godzilla for being a lighter-hearted take on Goji. Side note, Steven.
And this is Blue Scream fucking calling me out here. This feels like specifically calling me out.
I am glad that I'm here to read this to you, so I will confront you directly.
Okay.
I will listen to the fans.
You will take on the voice of Blue Scream.
Steven, you skip Rodan, but you have time to cover Ultraman X? Shame on you. Although, if you decide to spin off an Ultra podcast, then Blue Scream will accept that as an adequate apology.
Blue Scream, I owe you nothing. Whether it's an apology, an Ultraman podcast, or a Rodan podcast.
Stephen works in mysterious ways.
I jest. It was actually... Ideally, I would have liked to have done a podcast on Rodan, because I think that's maybe... It would have been an important film to show Ross.
Yeah, and maybe it's something we can go back and do.
It's something we can do at one point, but you know what? If we're going to choose between having time... In all seriousness, if we're going to choose between having time to record a podcast, whether it's a Godzilla one or a non-Godzilla one, if Ross and I have found the time together, we're going to do a Godzilla one because that's the main focus of the podcast.
Yeah.
But having said that, I would like to at some point do more episodes on non-Godzilla Toho Kaiju films, or even
some with me, some with other people.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't at all rule out at some point we will have more side episodes with different people, different co-hosts discussing different films, much like we had Laura and John on discussing Mothra, and we had Laura back on discussing Ultraman X. Like to do a little bit of variety, and let's face it, one day we are going to run out of Godzilla films. So,
but the Kaijusaurus media empire will perhaps need to keep spreading.
So yeah, long story short, fuck you, Blue Scream.
Yeah, that's cool. Right, podcast over.
That's just a joke, Blue Scream. Thank you, Alex, Britlowski, Chris, and Blue Scream for your submissions. So, as always, let's wrap this up. You can find Kaijusaurus Podcast on Tumblr, SoundCloud, Facebook. You can find both of us on Twitter. I am at Steven Scrivello. Ross is
at Roz Menzo. Menzo. Or Z. Your preference.
Links to all these ways to contact us will be in the show notes, which will be posted at kaijusaurus.tumblr.com, the blog from which this podcast is spun off. We have no other housekeeping announcements, I don't think. So, Ross, I'll leave you with the news that the next film...
Tell me more.
A little bit of pre-trivia. The next film was originally intended to be the last.
Really?
Yes.
Whoa, I love a fake finale.
We have some old favourites returning behind the scenes.
Oh, right, okay.
The next film is the battle cry that could save the world. Destroy all monsters!
Sounds good. I'm game.
It is good. And we will see you soon enough for Destroy All Monsters. Ross, I'm glad you liked Son of Godzilla.
I did.
I
really
like
did.
it too.
I like it too. Well, cheerio, guys. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.